So good morning, everybody. Can everyone tell me where are you signing in from this morning? And can you hear me clearly? And how is the signal? Okay, that's great to see. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at task achievement. Just a quick introduction from me before we start. My name's Samuel. I'm an IELTS examiner based in South America, and I've been working in this area for 6 years. So hopefully today I can offer you an insight on the topic we're going to look at. And today we're specifically going to focus on task achievement, which is one of the band descriptors on the IELTS exam. Okay, so you have 4 band descriptors. You have task achievement, you have cohesion and coherence, lexis, and grammar. And today we're going to focus on the first one, which is one of the main ones that a lot of people make mistakes on. So let's begin, shall we? So by the end of this webinar, you will avoid the common mistakes that stop strong candidates not achieving a band 8, understand why TA, and TA is in reference to task achievement, is so important to your overall score, understand the different task achievement requirements between academic charts, process diagrams and maps, and general letters in task 1. So we're going to be focusing on task 1 today across the whole IELTS spectrum for task achievement. And then finally, when we finish, you'll have an opportunity to do a Q&A session with me through the chat box. Okay. Okay. So Maha, TA is task achievement, which is what the band descriptor that we will be focusing on today. Okay. So task achievement criteria. What task achievement is asking you guys is, can you accurately explain the relevant information on the graph or diagram? And did you include all important information? Okay, so that's the main 2 things it focuses on. So despite seeming fairly straightforward, many people do not achieve a TA band in line with the other bands and English level due to making some common mistakes. For example, the person who wrote this received an overall band of 6.5. And as we can see here, the lexis and grammar is great. But in a moment, we're going to find out why someone who can write like this might only achieve a 6.5, okay? Okay. So band descriptors. So as I said, when you're graded on your IELTS exam, the examiner focuses on 4 band descriptors. One is task achievement. The other one is cohesion and coherence. Then you have lexis, and then you have grammar. Okay. Task achievement is the very first one. And when they're focusing on what grade to give you, they look at the following band descriptors here to decide which one you guys fit into. So there are a couple of barriers that we need to watch out for. And these are barriers that even people with very good English sometimes fail to overcome. And that's why they don't achieve the grade they should be achieving on IELTS. So you're going to have a quick turn as teachers now. So here's an example question from IELTS task 1 on the academic test. So as we can see, the chart below shows the expenditure of 2 countries on consumer goods in 2010. So we have the amount spent and the different types of consumer goods here. And then we also have 2 different bars for France and the UK. Hi, a couple of you are saying there's an issue with sound. Is everybody experiencing the same problem? No, sound is fine. So it must be something on your computers. Okay, so back to this. So this is an example of, as I was talking about before, this is a bar chart from task 1 of the academic IELTS test. Okay, so let's have a look. Examiners also have to read the questions carefully. So that's the first thing that I would do in this position. So we need to analyze the graph and look at its essential details and key features. So you guys can do that quickly. A good idea for this activity we're just going to do now is for you guys to take a screenshot or a photo of your screen. So if you can just do that now, that will help you with the next activity we're going to do. Okay, so I'll give you a few moments just to do that. Okay, so let's move on. Let's have a look at Juan Pablo's answer. So this is an answer taken from the IELTS test. So here's his answer for this particular task 1 question. So just read through this quickly. What do you think he received for task achievement? What do you think this candidate received for task achievement? Okay, we've got Vo saying 7. I'll give the rest of you a bit more time to have a look at this. Oh, we've got some people saying as low as 5. Okay, let's have a look. So some major issues here. Juan Pablo hit a number of barriers despite having a good level of English. His lexis and grammar are actually really high. They're probably 8 and above. But he has not included an overview, which is essential for task 1. He has not taken data directly from the graph. So he has not extrapolated data for his answer. And most severely, he has not included all the key features. Okay, so because of this, for task achievement, remember, this is not the overall grade. This candidate cannot achieve a higher grade than for task achievement than 5. Okay, so you can see what a big issue this is. If you don't meet the barriers of the task achievement, it will bring your average down significantly. Okay. Okay. So the first issue was the question has been copied word for word with no paraphrasing. There's lots of irrelevant information of English is high, albeit unrelated to the task. There's an inappropriate structure. It is not necessary to do a conclusion. You only need to do an overview. Yeah, very good, Sarah, as you just mentioned. So to avoid the task achievements common barriers, we must remember to paraphrase the question, write an overview mentioning the key features, take data directly from the chart, paraphrase the question, and avoid irrelevant information. Okay. So these are the main barriers to avoid when we're thinking about task achievement. And then once we've avoided those, we can start focusing on getting a higher grade. But if any of these happen, we're going to be stuck on 5 and 4. Okay, so let's go back to the question now. So we're going to focus on doing a model answer now that meets the requirements of task achievement, okay? So can you guys tell me what are some good techniques for paraphrasing? Synonyms, yeah, that's right, guys. What else? Changing word form, changing voice. Great. Word formation, excellent. Very good. So changing word order, active to passive voice, potentially synonyms. Okay, so let's focus on writing this together now. So the chart's something, the amount of money spent on 5 consumer goods, cars, computers, books, perfume, and cameras in France and the UK in 2010. So what word could I use here? Okay, yeah, lots of you writing illustrates, shows, presents, they're all good answers. So the chart illustrates the amount of money spent on 5 consumer goods in France, UK, 2010. Units are something in pounds sterling. Okay, lots of you writing good answers here too, presented, shown. Let's have a look. So units are measured in pounds sterling. Okay, let's go back to the chart now. Something, the UK spent more money on consumer goods than France in the period given. Overall, the UK spent more money on consumer goods than France in the period given. Okay. Oh, sorry. Both the British and the French spent most of their money on cars. Something, the least amount of money was spent on perfume in the UK. Something, 2 cameras in France. Let's have a look. So whereas the least amount of money was spent on perfume in the UK compared to cameras in France. Very good. Furthermore, the most something difference in expenditure between the two countries was on cameras. Okay, so the most significant difference in expenditure between the two countries was on cameras. Okay, and then we move on. Now we have to provide evidence for our overview by taking appropriate data from the graph. So both countries had their greatest expenditure on cars, though people in the UK spent slightly more at something, 450,000, while the French recorded something. Okay, so lots of you are writing approximately. So I've gone for at about £450,000, while the French recorded £400,000. So here we're starting to include the data directly from the graph. The British expenditure was higher on books than the French, around 400,000 and 300,000 respectively. Let's have a look. Similarly, the British expenditure was higher on books than the French. Okay. And we continue down here. Let's have a look. In the UK, expenditure on cameras, just over 350,000, was over double that of France, which was only 150,000. Okay, on the other hand, the amount of money paid out on the remaining goods was something in France. Let's have a look what you're writing. Was lower. Anything else? Was higher in France. A little more than something was spent by the French on computers, making the outlay higher than the British, who spent exactly £350,000. So what piece of information do we need here? Let's have a look. A little more than 350,000 was spent by the French on computers, making that outlay higher than the British, who spent exactly 350,000. Okay, and then neither of the countries spent much on something, which merely accounted for 200,000 of expenditure in France, but even lower at under 150,000 in the UK. Good. So neither of the countries spent much on perfume, which merely accounted for 200,000 of expenditure in France, but even lower at under £150,000 in the UK. Okay, as you can see, this answer has avoided the common pitfalls we saw in Juan Pablo's answer. So the TA for this answer will be between 8 and 9, probably 9. Okay. So just a couple of things to remember. When we look at this answer, we can say that it fully satisfies all the requirements of the task. It clearly presents a fully developed response, and then also covering all of Band 8's requirements. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the process diagram. So here we go. We can see an example of a process diagram here. So test one has two other types of common questions that come up. So we have process diagrams and maps as well. And they look like these two in general. So the first question to ask yourselves, is the task achievement the same for these two tasks? Well, yes, it is, but we have to take some things into consideration. So we're just going to go through a few answers, and you just need to tell me, are these answers true or false? Okay, so the first one, you need to take exact data from the process diagram or map. Is that true or false? Yep, that's true. Very good. So it's very important. However, you're not extrapolating numbers or figures in the charts. That is slightly different from the bar chart itself. The next one, you need to only select all the key features. Is that true or false for these two tasks? Yeah, that's false. So in this one, it's a little bit different because you need to mention all the stages of the process diagram. So any changes that you see on the maps, you also have to mention those, and all the processes that are seen on the process diagrams, they also need to be mentioned in your answer. So it's a little bit different from the bar chart, because in the bar chart, you can select your main features and just talk about them. But for both the process diagram and the maps, you really need to talk about all the changes that you see. Okay, you need to paraphrase the question, true or false? Yep, that was an easy one. And this one here, I still need to look for comparisons and tendencies. That's true also. Okay, though it is slightly harder, especially in the process diagram. Okay, so we're going to go through a couple of examples of these two types of questions. So here we go. The first one. As always, with task one, the process diagram also requires an overview. How would you provide an overview for this process diagram? Would you state how many processes there are? Would you talk about how it starts and finishes? Or would you go more for categorization? What would be your favored strategy? Okay, so all of these are ways that you can do an overview statement for the process diagram. Okay, so you need to choose the one that you believe is most appropriate for you when doing the exam. So we're going to have a look at an example in a moment. So as always with task one, the process diagram also requires an overview. So we're going to focus on this one today. So the recommended way to provide an overview is via grouping the processes, usually in 2 or 3 categories. So how could you group the this process diagram that you can see in front of you in categories? How could we do that? So just take a moment to look at this example question and tell me how you would do that. So a couple of you are saying 3 parts or 3 groups. UHS is saying initial, middle, and final phases. Okay, let's have a look at this here. Mustafa is saying raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods. Very good, Mustafa. Okay, let's have a look. So one way we could do this is we could have refinements and melting of raw materials. That could be followed by casting and molding. And finally, we could have quality control. So as many of you said, 3 stages. That will be the best way to separate these and group these processes that are happening in the diagram. And I would separate them like this. Okay, so let's have a look. So let's have a look at how an overview might look for this process diagram. What word do we always begin with so that you can let the examiner know what you're doing? Yep. Okay, that's correct. Yeah, absolutely. So just signpost it, use overall, don't use any other word. Always do your overall statements or your overview statement with the word overall to start with. Okay. That's very important to remember. Just signpost it, and that means the examiner knows this person has fulfilled this requirement, it's done. I can start focusing on giving this person a grade that's higher than 5. So overall, the process diagram, the processes can be grouped into 3. Phases, stages, okay? Beginning with the something of the raw materials. Do we remember this word? Very good. Keenan, let's have a look. Beginning with the melting and refinement of raw materials. The something are then casted and molded. Let's have a look. The steel rods are then casted and molded before finally being sized and put through something. What word's missing here? Saw says quality control. Hallie also says quality control. Let's have a look. Through quality control. Okay. Good. Okay, so that is how you would do a overview statement for the process diagram. Okay, and then from there you would develop your answer further. Okay, so to finish the seminar today, we're also going to focus on the general TA because we're looking at both today. So the previous ones that we looked at were about academic. Now we're just going to have a look at general task achievement. So Keenan says, do process diagrams need body paragraphs? Yes, of course they do. But today we're just focusing on a small part of the answer. Okay, and we're just focusing on the overview statement. Okay, so let's move on to general now. So as we can see here, we should spend about 20 minutes on this task. You're going to another country to study. You would like to do a part-time job. And while you are studying, you want to ask a friend who lives there for some help. Okay, so in this, you need to write a letter to this friend. In your letter, give details of your study plans, explain why you want to get a part-time job, and suggest how your friend could help you find a job. Okay. So the general writing task one is always as we can see here, a letter. Okay, so we're going to have a look at an example. We're going to have a look at an example letter now from the IELTS test. Okay, so here we have an example letter that was taken from one of the candidates' exams. Okay. So just have a quick look at this now and tell me, what grade do you think this answer got for TA? I'll give you a moment just to review it. And then tell me why as well. So also give me a couple of reasons why. So a lot of you are saying it's too formal, which is a very fair comment. Incorrect structure as well. Well, let's have a look. Okay. So inconsistent tone is one. So dear Mrs. Rodriguez is very formal. How are you doing? It seems like such a long time since we have seen each other. So again, I mean, if you're starting your letter with this, it suggests that you shouldn't be greeting the person as Mrs. Rodriguez, for example. And yeah, as many of you are saying, it's not a formal letter. Okay, also, it's missing a bullet point. So one of the requirements of the task was that they needed to mention on how she would like her friend to help her get a job. So there's no mention of that within the task, which is so if you miss one of the bullet points, that's another reason that's going to hold you back on task achievement. That will keep you down to a 4, in fact. And then finally, there's no send-off. So if you're writing a letter or an email, you have to write it as you would in real life. So you need to have a send-off. You need to have a sign-off to your letter. Okay, so something like best regards, yours sincerely, etc. I mean, for this particular letter, because it's supposed to be a more informal register, it'll be something like all the best or something along those lines. Okay, so TA is severely obstructed because not all the bullet points have been answered, while the tone is also inappropriate in places. So this TA would actually be a 4. So they may get a much higher grade for the lexis, grammar, cohesion and coherence, etc. But the task achievement would be as low as a 4. Yeah, that's exactly right. Sorry to be a burden. Seems too formal and a bit of, heavy. Okay, so yeah, so as we can see here on GT, may present a purpose for the letter, but it is unclear at times. The tone may be variable and sometimes inappropriate, so that will keep it to a 5, but then it goes as low as a 4 because it doesn't fully address the task. Not all key features are covered, and also the format may not be appropriate, and that applies if you don't do a sign-off. Okay, so let's have a look at this last one now. So let's have a look at this one. What grade do you think that this one got here? So a lot of you are writing quite low. Also tell me why you think what you think. Okay, so remember this is for task achievement. And let's have a look. So this would receive between an 8 and a 9. The candidate answers the question well, covers all the bullet points. They keep a consistent tone throughout. It's as if they're talking to a friend. And they also maintain the structure of a letter and an email. So there's nothing more that you can do really than this. And if you do an answer like this, which is still relatively short, you're fulfilling the task. So this is enough to get a high band for your task achievement. And as Ha says, her essay includes all the bullet points. She also signs off. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so Maha asks, what is the meaning of consistent tone? So when we talk about tone, we're talking about register. So if it's supposed to be an informal letter, it means that you keep a level of informal language throughout your text, which was one of the issues with the last letter, because they changed from formal to informal to formal to informal. So that is not consistent tone. But in this case, this person has managed to maintain a consistent tone throughout the answer. Ahmed is asking, what is the penalty if we mix UK and US accent in writing, or UK or US language? There's not a bad way to write English. You can write Australian English, British English, American English, but whatever style you choose, you should be consistent. So just keep on using the same type of language throughout your answer. Okay, so if you're using Zs in words like organization, globalization, etc., make sure that you continue doing that and you don't put an S in a couple and a Z in a couple. Okay. Okay. Ahmed says, if I do make a mistake, would that affect my marks? I think if you did it systematically and there was differences in the way that you were spelling words in your answer, it might affect your overall grade. Would one or two errors in grammatical structure affect TA? In the letter she wrote, a job help. Well spotted, Wei-Wen. One or two, no. So what examiners are looking for is systematic errors. So if someone is making an error that they're always making with that grammar structure, if it's one error, that can sometimes be put down to, okay, this is just a typo. This is just a mistake that that is not consistent with the language of the candidate. Okay, so if it's not systematic, it won't affect their overall grade significantly. But again, that's why it's always a good idea to check over your writing once you finish, to make sure that you don't have those small errors in the text. Maha says, I think it's wrong to write a question in the body paragraph. Well, if you're writing an essay, it's not appropriate, but if you're writing a letter where you need to request information from the person you're writing to, you have no option, you have to ask a question. And that's a very natural thing to do as well. When you write to your friends and you need help, you write questions within the body of text. So in this circumstance, it's perfectly fine. Hitu, can one mistake affect the band score? I mean, it always depends on the mistake. But if it's, like I said, if it's a small mistake that's not consistent with the rest of your writing, no, it won't do. Kyokong says, do the examiners feel bored if all the essays follow the same structure? Well, that's a very thoughtful question. But no, our job is not to get bored with your answers. And if it's a good structure, we're normally very happy because it means that we will be able to give you a good grade. So don't worry about how the examiners feel when they're marking your work. Is it a good idea to memorize? And Abu Bakr says, is it a good idea to memorize templates and to apply them accordingly? You can follow templates, but again, you never know what question is going to come up on the exam. So it's a better idea to focus on the different types of questions you will get, and just to focus on your style of answering those, and just making sure that you meet all the requirements of task achievement. So like we discussed today with the letter, making sure that you have a sign-off, a greeting, that you follow all the bullet points, and that you have a consistent tone or register throughout your answer. Okay, let's move on. So this person with this letter fully satisfied all the requirements of the task, and they clearly present a fully developed response. There's no more that they can do than that. And also they meet all the requirements for 8s. Okay, so exam tips. For the academic tests, you need to include an overview statement beginning with overall, highlights the key features and look for patterns, take data directly from the graph to back up your claims, and imagine the examiner cannot see your charts, so you have to explain it as clearly as possible. For the process diagram and map, everything needs to be mentioned, which is different from the bar chart because you're only picking out the key features. For the general test, read the question carefully, keep a consistent tone, and use a traditional letter structure. And discuss all the bullet points. That is essential. Okay. So task achievement is where many students slip up. Ensure you understand the question fully and answer as fully and as completely as possible. Okay, so we're just going to have 5 minutes of questions now. I'm just going to look back and see if I've missed any that you've asked while I was just summarizing the seminar. Tasneem, do you think all the best should have a comma or full stop? Tasneem, all the best should have a comma after it. Brian, which do you think is harder in writing task 1, the academic or general? I would say the most difficult one is academic, because in the general one, in task 1, you have to write a letter, which is challenging, but it's easier to comply with what they're looking for. You just have to follow the bullet points. You need to realize the tone or register that's necessary. But apart from that, it's more straightforward, whereas the bar charts and pie charts, etc., can be a little bit more tricky. what is the maximum words we should write? Nia is asking in task 1 and task 2. So task 1, you should write anything between 150 and 210 words. I'd say you don't need anything more than 210 words is excessive. You won't lose marks, but it's just not necessary. And then similar for task 2, anything between 250 and 310 words. Okay. Ha has asked, will repeating the same word in the essay make us have a lower band? For example, the topic is shopping online and we repeat the word shopping online too much instead of using words such as online shopping, shopping via the internet. Well, exactly, you just answered your question. If you can paraphrase and if you can offer synonyms or change word order, and this is showing your flexibility with the language. So if you can do that, that's great. I'd say if you say it twice, that's fine. If you're saying the same word 3 times, it might be getting a bit excessive. But again, it depends on the word that you're using, but there's some words that just don't have many synonyms. Okay. Keenan, can I go to the previous slide? I believe I can. I will do that at the end of the session, Keenan. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a spill to finish off today. So the speaking test live we're offering at the moment. How it works, you schedule your speaking test, book a test and choose a suitable time. When taking the speaking test, you complete a 30-minute one-to-one speaking test session with a qualified examiner. At the end of that, you receive a score, both verbal feedback after the test and a written report with a band score with suggestions for improvement. It looks like this. You get your grades, and then you are also given reasons for those grades here. Okay. And these are all the links that you need and required in relation to that. So you've got your speaking and writing evaluations just up here. Also further webinars available here and when they're going to happen. And then some other resources too that we offer. Okay, one other question here. Yen, the conclusion isn't included in task 1. No, you don't do a conclusion in task 1. You just do an overview statement. If you do a conclusion, it's just not necessary. You're repeating yourself if you do that. Okay, I'm going to go back to the tips now. If you just give me a moment. Okay, so for the people who are asking for the tips, here we go. Okay, did I miss any other questions? Maha says, should we write a long essay or will they tell us how many body paragraphs we should write? Well, in general, what we usually recommend is that you write an introduction, 2 body paragraphs and a conclusion. Any more than that is not really necessary. If you wanted to do 1 other body paragraph, that would be possible, but you don't need to. Shinta says you keep repeating to include an overview statement, starting with overall. is it necessary to be overall, or is there an alternative statement? You could write something else, but the reason that I keep repeating it is because you have to meet that requirements to get higher than a 5 in task achievement. So if you just write overall to begin your overview statement, that just means the examiner knows that this candidate has done that requirement, and now I can focus on this person getting a higher band potentially. So it's like in conclusion, you can write other things instead of in conclusion, but there's no point. In conclusion is the best statement for that particular part of the essay in task 2. So that's the one that you use. And it's the same with overall for the overview statement. It's the best signpost piece of language we can use. So it's better to use that. Q, do native speakers take the IELTS, and for what? This question is a trivia question. I'm curious about that. I believe they do. I think when people try and get visas in any country, it doesn't matter if they're native or not. If they take the IELTS test, they get a higher amount of points on their application. So I believe so. I've known plenty of English and Irish people in my time who have taken the IELTS in Australia, for example, when they were doing the visa process there. And some of them don't get 9. Okay, guys, I think that's us coming to the end of the class today. I hope it was useful. And I hope that you all have lots of luck in your upcoming IELTS exams. Please do keep practicing and use as many of the materials that we provide as possible. And looking forward to seeing some of you in a couple of weeks for the next seminar. Okay. Thank you very much.